ways of thinking, ways of communicating. There's a whole Eastern mindset. There's an Eastern mind and there's a Western mind, right? Totally different ways to approach the world. And we can go over to China and think, how do you guys think like that? It's just very different from us, right? That's culture, ways of thinking. Now, Robert's Rules. Robert's Rules is a development of culture. Here is a wise way to run a meeting. It's a wise gift that we currently have, and it makes our meetings faster. It makes our meetings more efficient. It makes it so that we're not fighting with each other in meetings. It's a really good tool that's been developed and passed down, culture, from generation to generation, or obviously originally with the Greeks and Romans, but then since Robert started to really develop it too. So think of it that way. This is a good gift. We ought to know it, and we ought to use it. It's good culture. 2, biblical perspective. 1 Corinthians 14, verse 40, do all things with decency and in good order. Robert's Rules solves this. Right? Here's a good way to run a meeting. And again, the church order book, that green book, 10 pages is all that you would have to read. This is how our classes and synods are supposed to operate. It's good parliamentary procedure, and it's almost exactly like Robert's Rules. There's only 6 differences that I was able to find. That was my fault. All right. I know which way to go from now on, so I won't make that mistake again. Oh, we got practice session number 1. What I'm going to have you guys do is now participate with me in a meeting. All right? It's early. Oh, yeah, that slide's not on there. We're going to do this 4 times. All right? It's supposed to be interactive. That's what they said. So before we have any defined rules, you guys need to participate, and I need to, buy your participation. So I purchased candies. And if you raise your hand, I will throw a candy at you to make sure that this goes well. All right? So the setting that we have is that the event, our meeting, okay, what we're gathered here to do is to talk about this name, Young Calvinists. Right? Now, in real life, it's a fantastic name, but for the purposes of our meeting, what are you thinking? Young Calvinists? Right? We ought to come up with a better name than that. Right? You can draw way more crowds, be way more relevant to society if you come up with a different name. Calvinists is kind of fundamentalist. People aren't going to be interested in what this old man said way back then. And 1 Timothy 4, verse 12 says, let no man despise thy youth. It recognizes that youth has something despisable about it. And what do you guys do? You call yourself young Calvinists. You're irrelevant. Therefore, the motion that we're now going to discuss is what better name, culturally relevant name, can we come up with to advance our society so we get more membership? That's the motion on the floor. Anybody have a comment that they'd like to make? Ben. Oh, he's using Robert's Rules way better than what he ought to. All right. He'd like to table the motion. What urgent matter, I don't know, but what urgent matter do you think came up for which you should table the motion? Anyway, that's tabling the motion. Anybody got any ideas? Something relevant. Hashtag something. Sir. Yeah, Christian. That's a little bit more broad, or hope. Yep. All right. Yeah. Okay. Here you go. Good job. Good thought. A whole bunch of churches are going with community or something like that. We could be hashtag community, because that's culturally relevant. What else? Yep. No. Ah. All right, so we should do something about the grounds. Yep. These are better? Okay, we have more options, more candy options. Good. Okay, I was thinking, iron sharpens iron. I've got an idea here of forging steel. Good name? Like that? All right. We're going to have to make a decision on things. So, we good with forging steel? All right. So, okay. What do you guys think about what Jake just said?
I said no, bad idea.
All right, this is the anarchy that I was looking for. It took you a while to really start to do that. And I really needed somebody to slam Jake. Anybody? Very good. Worst idea I've ever heard. This is the problem, and this is why we need to have Robert's rules. All right? Watch this. Oh. Are you trying to run it and me at the same time? I'm only doing one click. Okay, I'll just say next slide, please, from now on, all right? We're not there yet. There's where we are. Meetings can be a disaster. That's where we're at. Next slide, please. All right, very good. We didn't really vote. We started speaking negatively about others. One man can dominate the meeting. What if Jake has all kinds of great ideas and I keep going back to him and him and him and him and I never choose anybody else? Robert's rules will actually say you need to do the new hand first. You can't keep going back to the same person, all right? Robert's rules will also say you have to go every other. Go pro, and then to the best of the president's ability, go con. Pro, con, the whole way through, so that we're hearing both sides. So Robert's rules will alleviate a lot of the problems that we just ran into. Maybe we voted too soon, and we're unsure of what the vote was even on. I don't know which one of those ideas we actually, went ahead with. Next slide, please. All right, so here's the gist of Robert's rules. Here's the simplicity of Robert's rules. You're at a meeting, somebody's going to make a motion. The motion is a proposal to take action. Second, the committee discusses that motion, and only that motion. You can't bring up all kinds of side things. Right? I'm currently a member of a fellowship committee at Zion, and we get together and meet, and I come up with a really good idea for how we can have fellowship together, maybe a bike ride. And as we're discussing it, somebody gets another idea, and they just chuck that thing out there. And so then we're trying to handle that a little bit, and then the third idea comes. We don't operate by Robert's rules, and we go slowly because we don't operate by Robert's rules, and I guess I'm the one that should be the fuddy-duddy one and say, hey, let's use Robert's rules here and move along through this, right? So the simplicity of Robert's rules, somebody makes a motion, the members will only discuss that motion, and then they can make amendments on it, and then you vote. And then you move on to the next agenda item, which might have the next motion. Everybody discusses that, maybe you make amendment, and then you go on. It's just a nice cycle, which took 671 pages to finally, develop. And we'll see that continue to grow as the years go by. Next slide, please. So the heart then of Robert's Rules is going to be that motion. A motion is a proposal for the members to take action. Let's purchase this property. Let's add a second gymnasium to Covenant. Let's replace our organs, whatever it is. So that's a motion, right? Who brings a motion? So you're going to come to this committee and say, I want to say something. I don't know if I can make a motion. The number one group, the number one entity that brings a motion at most of the committees that you will actually be involved in is standing committees. So your churches or your schools will have a finance committee, maybe a catechism committee, a Sunday school committee, a music and program committee. Those are the committees that will actually have motions prepared. They're going to come to the meeting having done stuff during that month, And in their report, they're going to say, we feel like we should do this, this, and this. So as they're making their reports, that's where the motions are going to come from. However, motions can also come from agendas. A school society, a school board is going to make a whole agenda, and they're going to lay out several proposals, several motions. And then at the meeting, the president will lead the society, and you'll just click through one agenda item after another. Many of those agenda items will be motions to adopt this budget, again, to add on to the school, to do something else. So that's where a lot of your motions will actually arise. A third one is individual members. Recognize the value of Robert's Rules. If you guys just got together and just started to have a meeting without Robert's Rules, do you feel like some of you might totally be overlooked? Right? Your voice isn't really heard. Nobody's really listening to you. Other people dominate the meeting. Robert's Rules solves that. Right? Many agendas have new business on the agenda. So after all the standing committees make their report, and there's something called ad hoc committees do their report, then there's new business. If you have your hand up, that president calls on you, and then you can make your motion, and then the whole society will discuss it. So this is valuable. As Christians, Calvinists, we stand shoulder to shoulder, the rich, the poor, the active, the less active, and we all have that say. So Robert's Rules is a good thing. The president, does the president bring up motions? No, he does not. The president merely runs the meeting. He's supposed to be impartial. If the president is making the motions, then he's not an impartial judge. He's not an impartial runner of the meeting, because I'm lacking the word that I'm looking for. So no, the president actually does not bring up he conducts the meeting. There it is. Good. Those motions also should be carefully written. There are hours and hours and hours spent fixing people's poorly written motions. When you guys serve on whatever committee you serve on, write up your motions well, think it through, so that when the committee or when the meeting is happening, it's well written and there's not all kinds of amendments that have to be added to it. Next slide, please. The main motion. The main motion is going to be the first motion that gets brought up on any agenda item or that the committee is bringing up. That's called the main motion. So here's a few words, right? Main motion. That's the motion that's bringing up the whole following discussion, the main motion. It's also the pending motion. The pending motion is always the motion on which we are about to vote. So whenever there's a discussion going on, that one motion can be the main motion and the pending motion. But that main motion is often amended. So one of the members raises their hand and say, motion to amend. And the president will say, and how would you like to amend it? And then that member will say, well, we should get rid of this word, we should add this word, we should put some type of a time frame on it. Maybe we cap the dollar amount that we're about to spend on this. All kinds of different amendments can arise. When you have an amendment, this is hard to do. When you have an amendment, you have to only discuss the amendment. You're no longer discussing the whole motion. So ready? The pending motion is on the amendment. So the only comments that can be brought up are on that amendment. Right? You don't go back and talk about anything else, only that amendment. And then you have to vote on that amendment because it was pending. Pending, again, means you are about to vote on this motion, right? So the pending motion is the amendment. You have to pass that motion, and once it's passed, the president might say, all right, the new motion is all of this as amended like this. All right, so now we're back to that main motion, and the main motion is pending because we've passed the amendment. We will have to practice this, and we'll do that real soon here. All right, next slide, please. Oh, no, red. Red means the PRC thinks differently, all right? So the amendment can be amended once. In the green church order book, it actually says that an amendment cannot be amended. So think about it. You have your main motion. Somebody makes an amendment. You cannot amend that amendment. Now, you can pass the amendment, And then another amendment can be attached, and another one, but it gets too confusing for the members if you amend an amendment once, twice, 3 times. Say, okay, what are we currently, how's it stated now? It's changed so much since the beginning. Reese. Right. I wish I could say, and I don't know. What I read is the Green Church Order book, which is synodical rules. So classes might also have their own rules, which are different than synod. I wish I would have asked. I did email 2 ministers and get feedback and everything. I did not think to ask, are they all the same? Aaron? Okay, very good. Robert's Rule says, so whatever I have up here is always Robert's Rules. So it says you can amend it once. The Green Book says you cannot amend an amendment. Okay, next slide, please. Handling a motion. A motion is made, and now, this is significant. It's 12:30 at night. This guy keeps bringing up something. That means we have to talk. We have to stay here. We have to talk about this amendment. I'm sorry, we have to talk about this motion. I don't want to talk about the motion. I'm ready to go home. Then don't second it. When you second a motion, you are saying, I am the second person that views this motion as worthy of being discussed. Right? I did talk to others, some ministers, but also just others. They said, yeah, we actually had that. Somebody made a motion, and then the president said, would anybody like to second that motion? And nobody did. And that is a good thing. I've had that in my experiences too. I was at a meeting, nobody seconded the motion, all right? This makes it so that somebody can't dominate the meeting. Keep bringing up the same thing over and over, try to reword it and bring up the motion again. This is a good rule. So Robert's Rules is good. All right, it is called seconding a motion. It is not supporting a motion. All kinds of groups will have motions that are brought up, and then the president says, any support for that? That's not the idea of seconding. When you second a motion, you are not saying, I agree with the guy. You're saying, this is an issue that's kind of going around, and I agree. Let's discuss this thing and take care of it. You're not supporting the motion when you second it. I looked at the Green Book, right? And the PRC rules is, for synod, is you second the motion and you don't support it. Now, so many of you guys have so little experience with this, but I'm telling you, the president will hear a motion and he'll look around and say, any support? And somebody will yell, support. It's not in the book, the Green Book, or Robert's Rules, and it's too strong. Okay? The idea is just, yeah, this is worth discussing. That's the idea of seconding a motion. Yep, the PRC says second. All right, good. Next slide, please. All right, the rules of debate. We can kind of run through the rules of debate, but all of these rules are good. It gets rid of all the anarchy that we had at the beginning. So the rules say that there's silence on the floor. Perfect. Right? Your teachers have kind of adopted this language just in the classroom, right? Kids are talking in the back, and somebody has a question, and they look at him and they say, you know, this is what I would say to Colin. I'll just use him as an example. Guys, quiet. Colin has the floor. Right? So the idea is that only one person is talking. This is a good rule. It gets rid of anarchy. Everybody's listening to that one. All right, I'll pick up the pace on these rules. You always have to address the chair. The reason that this is important, or the president, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, there is a distinction. I won't do that. Okay? You address the chair or you address the president, and you do that to make these things impersonal. Otherwise, you can raise your hand, you can look at the person that had last been talking and said, so-and-so, what are you thinking? And then it's all personal. So in order to keep it impersonal, you just adjust the chair. And that president, by the way, gives you his undivided attention and looks at you, talk to me. All right, and when you're finished speaking, then he'll look other places. All right? All comments have to be germane. Germane means speaking about the motion. So whatever the pending motion is, that is the only thing that you may talk about. You can't bring up all kinds of other ideas. That is so good in my experience. If you're not abiding by these rules, there's just random comments that are brought up, right? Robert's Rules is a good thing. Next, insults are not allowed. We took care of that one. Interesting, you can only speak twice. And notice the red, right? So Robert's Rule says you may only speak twice. Is that good in a theological debate where there's a lot of weighty matters at a classis and at a synod and in a council room? No, it's not. So we've changed that and we've made it 3. So we only upped it once, right? But according to the church order book, you may speak 3 times to a motion, right? And I think the idea is you're probably not going to come up with any new comments. You're just going to repeat the comments that you've already had. Let's let other people bring out their ideas. That's probably the idea there. You may only speak for 10 minutes. Right now, you're like, I could never do a 10-minute speech. This will change, right? And soon enough, you're going to find yourself in charge somewhere, and you could easily do a 10-minute speech. Look what happened to me. Pro, con, pro, con, pro, con. You don't have to start pro. You can start con. In fact, the first thing that's going, the first person that's going to shoot up their hand is somebody against it, and that's fine, right? Somebody has a motion, people are thinking about it, and the cons are going to come first. That's fine. So you entertain that thought, and then you look around, oh, somebody else. But if there's multiple people with their hand up, to the president's best discretion, he has to find somebody that is about to say something on the other side, right? The idea is this. Let's not have all of the pro comments first and con comments second, right? So that the president's looking, and he's like, I don't like this idea. I'm against it, but I'm going to hide it. So what I'm going to do is just have everybody that's for it state it first. So they all spoke. All right, now I'm going to pick out all the cons. And so all you hear is negative, 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 and then you call for the vote. That's not fair, all right? So for fairness, you go every other to the best of your ability. New hands first. So if somebody has not yet spoken, you have them speak. So those are the rules of debate. Next slide, please. Oh, yep. I know. No. So a lot of times the president really knows their members, the members of their group, and he has a pretty good idea, and then he's able to do that. By the way, let me say this as well. As far as all these red things, the PRC does it differently. Robert's Rules is not made to be completely adopted by all societies. Instead, it's acknowledged in the very book that this should be adapted to your situations and your conditions. So you can totally change it and say you can speak 5 times. So each society can say, yeah, overall we'll take Robert's Rules, but we're going to make these changes. So they're not supposed to be this authoritative guide that you absolutely have to stick to. So that's why the PRC did change many ideas. Aaron? Yeah, I'd say that you can speak 6 times then. So the question was, if there are new amendments, can I speak again? Yes, you can speak 2 times to every pending motion, and every amendment is a pending motion. Okay, next slide, please. All right, we're going to practice again. Our goals are to use the word second and not support, to actually debate a little bit, go back and forth, to use the word Mr. President, so I'm the president of the society, and to amend the motion. So we have to get amendments, and we'll vote on things. You'll really see the scope of how this works. We are going to be the U.S. Congress, and the motion is to get money for the wall. I figured you might have some ideas there, and I can easily get discussion going, so that's why I'm doing that. The agenda item specifically, so it's on the agenda. The motion is up because we moved to that item on the agenda, and the motion is to designate $6.9 billion to build a physical barrier on the southern border. This is the motion that was presented by the governing body. Would anybody like to second the motion? You don't have to raise your hand or anything like that. It's just seconded. All right. The motion has been seconded. Now it's the job of the president to constantly make sure that you guys know what you're talking about. So I will repeat it just a few times. Motion 6.9 billion designated to the southern border for some type of a physical barrier. Any comments or discussion? Okay. You must raise your hand, and I have to call on you, and you have to say, Mr. President. Cosby? No? Somebody? Okay, Brett.
Mr. President, I move to designate $4 billion for the northern border.
For the northern border, okay. For the audio, I'll repeat all of the comments. He said, Mr. President, I move to amend, right, that we designate $4 billion also for the northern border. Now, as president, in charge of making sure the debate is done by Robert's rules, I will look at you and say, that is not germane. The comments have to be about building the southern border. And this is why we're doing this, right, for practice. All right, so that one was just shot down. Yep. Yep, I know. Eric. Yeah. Maybe I should have said that more slowly, or I probably missed it. An amendment cannot be something that's bringing up whole new ideas or that substantially changes the main motion. So if the government is thinking, let's build a southern barrier, 6.9 billion, and then a whole new idea comes up, no, that is not an amendment. So an amendment is not a rider that you place on a bill or a law in Congress. I mean, a rider is just totally different, right? Just something that we're also going to sneak through. Amendments and riders are different. Bryce. Mr. President? Yes, you could. Oh, okay. Is it germane to take out the physical aspect of it? You know what? This is where the president's got to make these decisions, right? And I'm going to decide that taking the word physical out of that, sure, we'll call that germane. You can make that amendment if you'd like. Do you make that amendment? No, it's just a discussion point. That's fine. That's a good point. You don't have to amend. You can just bring up discussion points. You can bring up questions as well. Any other comment? Yeah. Okay. Aaron. All right. The motion, the comment is that we amend the motion to add on 3.3 or $3 billion per year for maintenance costs. Okay, we second that motion. We didn't support it. Very good. The pending motion that you have to discuss now is to make a southern barrier with $6.9 billion and $3 billion of maintenance costs every year. Eric. We skipped over an amendment. You said, I asked you and then I turned away, I guess. So that was a good point of order, Eric. We'll just overlook that one. Yes. All right, do we have statistics that would allocate the amount of money that we would need to maintain the border wall? Is that the question? Okay. Do we have a member of the Homeland Security here that could address that question? Aaron. Yes, okay, yeah, thank you. So it has been looked into, and it is sufficient. Thank you. Mr. Homeland Security member, Jake. We'll get to those subsidiary motions and incidental motions later. Brad.
Mr. President, I believe that adding maintenance costs into this would be redirecting it.
All right, he's questioning the decision of the chair, and technically you can do that, and I can throw it out to the whole society, and if 50% of you agree that the chair or the president made a mistake, then you can actually overrule my decision, all right? So that's actually doable. We'll move along. Colin. This is a good point. So the question... Just don't start calling them names. Okay. Okay, so the question for the audio is, what kind of maintenance would we need if it's a brand new wall? I mean, I'm in construction, and that new wall ought not to need maintenance. So again, the president does not have to field all the questions and answer all the questions, right? He's not all knowledgeable or anything. He can point it right back to the members. So that's how you run a meeting. Can anybody address or have ideas of why we would need all that maintenance money if it's a brand new wall? All right, so there's an existing wall that is already in existence, and we're extending to that. So I'm just doing it for the audio. So we can just simply, we can spend that money fixing that existing wall. Good? Correct, yep. So you technically have to direct everything to me. Okay, I'm going to start to bring it to a close, but Mr. Kuiper? Yep, it's not a brand new wall, and it will always need maintenance. We probably want to start to build up a fund there, and it might kind of start to get battered right away in the first few years. So that's an idea. Aaron? Yeah, okay, the president's not doing a good job of keeping the motion in front of you. So yes, so technically we're talking about the pending motion is that amendment, and we're going to have to move along, right? So the pending motion is that amendment to add $3 billion, so all comments should be directed there, and most of them have been. So you have been germane, so that's good. Colin. In this type of scenario, am I allowed to amend an amendment? Yes, because we're doing Robert's rules, not PRCA rules. All right, the motion is to amend the amendment so that we fund, we begin to collect funds 365 days after so that we have one full year. All right, guys, let's bring this to a close. I know you have a really good idea. You want to fight, but let's move along with this. Can I have a second for that? Aaron, actual question, and Jake, actual. Hey, that's why we're here. Very good. Aaron. Oh, yeah, you can amend. No, okay. You cannot amend an amendment that has already passed. Now it's part of the main motion, right? You can only amend the amendment that you're currently working on. And right now we're working on that $3 billion change. Jake? I have to call for the vote. I'm trying to do that. Yes. Okay, she moves that the motion be postponed indefinitely. It's a very good motion. We'll get there in the end, but we currently don't know that motion yet. Okay, nope. I'm sorry. Because there's no, or I technically have to say, is there any further comments or discussion on this? Or I'm going to call for the question. Very good. There's none. We now have to vote on whether we're going to add the amendment of 365 days to the whole thing. All in favor say aye. And all opposed say no. All right? All right. So motion carries. So now the pending motion is just doing $3 billion maintenance fees. Any other comments there? No? Very good. All in favor of adding that motion, that amendment to the main motion of $3 billion, say aye. And everybody opposed, say nay. All right, motion carries. Now, if you have a problem with that, technically you can yell division, and that means that that you want to see the physical division within the membership. All right. At which point, so let's imagine that you guys are like, yays and nays, it was kind of the same, and you yelled division to me, all right? Then I would say, all right, let's see the division in the membership, right? All in favor of adding the amendment of $3 billion plus 365 days, signify by raising your hand. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, okay, very good. And how many opposed? Raise your hand. All right. So the amendment carries. Now we're back to the main motion. That's what you needed to see. That once you amend, boy, you got to vote on the amendment. So we did that. Let's just call it good, and let's move on. All right? Good. Sorry about not keeping up with all the candy distribution. Next slide, please. All right, voting. I myself did it wrong. Robert's Rules says that when you vote, we have to get a majority. No, a majority almost always is 50% of the cast votes. And I don't know if you just heard that. 50% of the cast votes. So if there are 100 members present right now, and a whole bunch of you guys are thinking about it, and you're like, I don't really know. I'm kind of on both sides. I'm really right in the middle. And so the president calls for the question, and now you're sweating bullets. I got to decide right now. And you're like, I'm just not going to do it. You may not vote. That is perfectly good, and that's even wise for you not to vote, in my opinion. So then the president says, all in favor, say aye. And did I say 100 people present, right? 20 people say yes. All in favor, say aye. Aye. And it's 20 of you. And all opposed, say no. See, the words are aye and no. And 10 of you say no. Well, that passes then. So it's not 50% of the members present. It is not 50% of the number of people on the rolls. It's 50% of the cast votes. However, it can be 66% on some motions, right? And I'm just looking, if you look at that other sheet that I gave you, look for the 2/3 when it comes to majority. It's almost always 50%. There's just a few of them that are 2/3. And here's your general rule for remembering if it's 2/3 vote, 66%, a super majority, right? It tends to be when that motion is going to take away the rights of other members that are sitting in that meeting. So if I make a motion that is going to strip away the rights that other people have, then that requires a supermajority. Like this, I move that we close debate. No, I've had my hand up for 2 minutes. The president called all kinds of other people. He never got to me. Now this guy makes a motion to close debate, right? That takes away my right to air my comment, all right? That requires 2/3, right? So if you look at all those 2/3 thing, it tends to be motions that take away the rights of other members. All right. The words officially, according to Robert's Rules, is aye, A-Y-E, not the letter I, or A, maybe you say, I wish I really knew, and no. Those are the words. When I do it in my class, I say, all in favor, say aye. Aye. all opposed, maybe same sign or something like that, but you're supposed to say, all opposed, say no. And a whole bunch of them will say no, right? Obviously, it is in red, so the PRC does make a difference. And to be accurate, I'm going to cheat. The last slide, the PRC says yay and nay. So all in favor, say yay, yay. All opposed, nay, nay. All right? However, I have it on authoritative sources that a whole bunch of our presidents of our synods and classes just use the word same sign. All right? So I'm not all against that or anything. I'm just saying that they actually don't always say yay and nay, what their rules actually suggest that they should. So I'm not trying to make an issue of that. I'm just pointing it out. Okay. Voting method priority. Robert's Rules is supposed to make meetings go quickly. Are we really going to do a ballot on every single vote that we do? It takes way too long. Just let me hear the voices. All in favor, say yeah, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say no. Just a few no. Done, move on. Let's not count all the ballots. So it's a smart priority. So if I can't detect a majority just on voice vote, then I'm going to call for a standing vote, and that should be in red, and it is. So the PRC changes that and say hand vote. We're not going to make all the delegates stand up. All right, just do a hand vote. We'll count hands as we go around, right? It's a minor difference. Accomplishes, it actually is faster, probably just to do a hand vote, all right? And then ballot would be the last thing. Okay, president's voting. The president is an impartial coordinator of the whole meeting. President does not vote unless it's a ballot, as in to elect new officers or new elders, new deacons, and things like that, right? But otherwise, the president does not vote unless his vote changes the outcome of the vote. Good. I had the word meeting there, and I did apparently send the most updated PowerPoint to the guys. So if you change the vote, then you can do it. So let's think through that. If it's a 50-50 vote, does it pass or fail? It fails, because a majority is greater than 50%. Maybe I didn't express that correctly the first time. Majority is greater than 50%. So if it's 50-50, okay, 100 yes, 100 no, then that motion fails. The president then can say, I am going to vote, and I'm going to vote yes. Motion passes. Okay? On the other hand, if the motion passes by just one vote, 200 for it, 199 against, and the president doesn't like it, he doesn't like the direction, then he can choose to vote and say, I'm going to vote no. All right? So that makes it a 50-50 failed vote instead of just passing by one. So the president is only allowed to vote in that situation. All right. Next slide, please. Oh, question. Yep. That gives the president an awful lot of authority, but actually, it seems to me that it gives the president just as much authority as all of the other members who are already allowed to express their votes. All right? So now here's the president who had withdrawn his participation, his opportunity to be a member, and it kind of reactivates his member status and says, I'm one with you. We're shoulder to shoulder as Christians. I get to vote too. And yeah, I mean, his is the public vote, right? But yep. So no, I don't believe that it gives him extra authority. It gives him equal authority as the rest of the members. Yep. All right. Next slide, please. Yep, good. Benefits of Robert's Rules, then, is that it's going to streamline the decision-making process. We can just move right through a meeting. It gives the leaders control. We can be like, you're not supposed to talk, and you've already said 3 things. All right, so it gives the leaders control. The meetings then get finished faster, especially, by the way, the vote to adjourn in Robert's Rules can happen at any time. It's 1:30. We're still here. Let's just go home. I move to adjourn, right? And all in favor say aye, aye. There it is. You're done, all right? So it actually makes it goes faster. That is different in the PRC. The church order book correctly says you have to complete the agenda. If it's 1:30, you may make a motion to recess, go home, reconvene at 9:30 in the morning or something like that, but you may not adjourn. Anything that's on that agenda for classes and Synod has to be dealt with. So they changed that in the PRC, which is a good change. They keep meetings from getting too impersonal. Again, the equality of membership I've hit several times, but this is significant for me. Number 6, it gives assurance that the decisions are binding. I wash decks and siding for condo complexes, and these condo complexes are made of like 300 members. Notice it says 300. 300 members, and they have association meetings. But these are old people, and they're tired, and they're hurting, and they're on vacation, and didn't I say it already? They're retired. I'm done with this. I don't want to do any more meetings, right? So they call for a meeting, and their quorum, I never used the word quorum on you guys yet. Quorum means what is the minimum number of people of membership present that makes this meeting official, right? There has to be quorum, and that quorum by default is 50%. So these condo associations, they have these meetings, and only like 30% show up, and they're like, none of our decisions are official. Let's go home, and they do. All right, so they have to change their bylaws and say, we're not doing Robert's Rules anymore. We're going to say 10% is going to be quorum, all right? Which in my case of 300 here is just 30 people. So 30 people then would make quorum, all right? But this will be binding. This is worth attending. I have more of a voice because nobody else is present, right? It gives us, so I'm willing to be here because I know that my decisions that I'm going to make are actually going to be binding. And then the voting is going to be 50-50. So, as in majority is just over 50%. So the question is, can 10% or can 10 aye votes actually bind a membership at a condo complex of 300? And the answer is absolutely. You set your quorum at 10%, 30 people show up. The vote is being taken right now. All in favor say aye, and 10 of them say aye, and all opposed say no. 3 people say no. We have a majority of the cast votes at only 10 people saying aye. So I have assurance that this decision is binding, and it would bind the whole membership of all 300. Good? All right, so Robert's Rules is good. Next slide, please. But there are some detriments. Number 1 is that there's little room for brainstorming. Some new business comes up, and it's like, this is really big. I don't know what I think. I need to just talk to friends and talk to people about it. But now we have to be all official and raise our hand and everything. The way to get around this is to recess, right? I move that we recess, right? Then you're having coffee. Recesses are not just take your brain off the ideas. Recesses are opportunities to gather, to meet up with your friends. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? Not to gang up on anybody, but just to work it out a little bit. Then you come back to the meeting. Okay? So the PRC, again, does a nice job with that. They recess. They give lots of time for thinking. And actually, that agenda goes out 2 weeks early, and all motions at classes and synod have to be on the agenda. There's no new business. So everybody's got 2 full weeks to think it through. So classes and synod does a nice job of avoiding this problem of people not having time to think about it. Right? Second one is that it hampers casual interactions in small committees. So if you guys have a committee of 4, don't necessarily appoint a chairman that's going to run it, and then he has to not just let free conversation go back and forth. And if you're super slow, okay, fine. Then start implementing some of Robert's Rules. But just choose to suspend the rules. That's one of the motions. I move that we suspend the rules. Let's just talk about this. Let's make decisions together. We can call it, quote, common consent. Let's just common consent this and talk it through. And is this our decision? Yes. Okay, good. All right. So that's a good way to get rid of this difficulty of having to be all formal. All right. We've got 8 minutes. So Let's move to the next slide. As in 8 o'clock, I'm going to be done. By the way, I have family visitation at 9. It was supposed to be at 8, and I was like, that's not going to happen, so I got it switched. Let's do one more relatively quick practice. All right, you are a school fundraising committee. And again, the idea is proper voting and good amendments. Let's make this flow really well. So no fancy little amendments that you all looking at and you want to practice, right? Let's just run with this, right? Motion to do away with all those low-profit, pesky fundraisers. Grounds. They take too much time from our students with very little financial reward, and they tend to stir up anger among all the other family members as these people beg them to purchase their crazy things. Very good. All right. Any comments or discussion on doing away with all low-profit fundraisers? Colin? Very good. Okay. Thank you for that. Anybody else? Let's get an amendment going. Eric? Okay, so the motion is to amend that we set it at maybe 10% or something like that, or we can say $100 per student or something like that. Let's go with $100 per student. Would anybody like to second the amendment? Very good. The pending motion is to add the amendment of anything that's not going to gain the average student $100 is going to, we're going to add that aspect to this amendment. I'm sorry, to the motion. Any comments or discussion there? No? Okay. Yeah, very good. Can you call for the president to make a vote? Yes, you can raise your hand and say, I move the previous question. That's the fancy way of doing it. But you can motion that we vote on this immediately. All right? And I'll take that as a motion. That's not debatable, is it? So that's a non-debatable motion. So all in favor of voting on this amendment right now, say aye. All opposed, say no. Division, very good. All in favor of voting on this right now, raise your hand. Very good. Where's all the no's, really? You are a vocal minority, right? All right. So the amendment passes, which means our new pending motion is the main motion, which is to do away with anything that's not going to make the average person $100. Yes? Oh, yeah. You can still vote even if you make the motion. Jake? We keep all. Okay, thank you. Rejected. All in favor of. Okay, Brad. No, we voted on the amendment. See, the amendment is incorporated now, so the main motion and the pending motion is that we do away with all fundraisers that make the average student less than $100. All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. Very good. So that is how to run a meeting. In the time left, I want to do some questions, and maybe we got one right away. Yes, and I may not have done. I thought that I did that. Okay. All right, so that's where the president always has to articulate what the vote is. So the vote initially was on having an immediate vote, then the vote was on the amendment, and then we were down back to that motion, main motion, and then we voted on the main motion. Okay? All right, so I do see hands. Very good. 1 second here. What's interesting then is the privileged motions, the subsidiary motions, the incidental motions, which are all higher level and everything. I'm happy to answer specific question on any one of those, but they are useful. Let me say this before I do your general questions. The most strong, powerful motion that you can make is on side 2 of this page. And the motion is, I object to the consideration of the question. I've heard this used before in one of our groups, and it passed, and it killed the motion immediately, and the whole thing was done, and it was never discussed. Right? So I object to the consideration of the question. The president says, on which grounds? It violates all of our, policies and things like that. And then is it debatable? No debate. So you don't have a chance to air it all out. I'm not recommending that I'm just telling you, presenting to you. This is one of the most powerful motions that will kill a whole big issue immediately at the beginning of the whole thing. Now, does our synods and classes have this? I don't think they do, because it's on the agenda and you have to deal with every item on the agenda, but our normal societies probably would. Okay? All right. I'm finished. So any questions? And we got 2 minutes. I can go a little bit longer or whatever, but yes, Colin. Point of order. Yes. What are we talking about? What am I voting on? So yes, you can definitely raise your hand and say, what are we talking about? What is the vote? Could you clarify it for me? And hey, you don't have to be all official and know all the vocabulary. Robert's Rules is supposed to help us in our meetings and not hinder us. So by all means, raise your hand. I believe you can even interrupt on that. While another speaker's speaking, you're allowed to interrupt and handle that, or ask that question. What are we voting on? I need to know, because the president didn't repeat it just before the votes were made. Yep. Do these rules apply to closed and open meetings? Yes, these rules apply to closed and open meetings in which the society adopts Robert's Rules. So if the society didn't adopt them, then no. It occurs to me that I should do one thing here, and that's go over the 6 PRC changes. So the absolute last slide says, here is how Synod has changed, or just has a different procedure. They haven't changed it. They just never adopted Robert's Rules. I guarantee that. Our synods never adopted Robert's Rules. And then that's a perfectly good thing. They came up with really good parliamentary procedure, which very much point by point sticks with, boy, what's the word there? Correlates, whatever, with Robert's Rules. So changes. We're only 10 pages. Robert's Rules 671. By the way, this is very good. You can't amend an amendment. Right? You can just make multiple amendments. The motion to adjourn may only happen when all the agenda matters have been carefully handled. It's an excellent change that we've made for church order. The next, in the PRC, you can speak 3 times to a motion. Next, PRC, it's just hand raised instead of standing vote. So many of these are just minor changes. The PRC says yay and nay. It rhymes. Maybe that's how you remember it, yay and nay, rather than aye and no. Right? And then the PRCA, you can't make a motion to postpone indefinitely either. So Robert's Rules, you can, they're discussing, I think this is crazy. Why are we discussing this at all? It doesn't fit with our society or whatever. And I motion that we postpone indefinitely. And that's just forever kill it and never come back to it. Robert's Rules, yes. No on the PRC. And that's a good rule, right? To say, no, we're not going to do this. We're going to respect all members that bring motions to our meetings. Yep. As amended, right. Yeah, so the question is, after the amendment is passed and you're back to the main motion as amended, can somebody amend to get rid of the amendment that was just attached? I guarantee that the answer is no, because that goes again, I forget the word for it, but no, you can't undo. You can't make motions to undo motions that you just adopted. Reese? All right, cookies and refreshments in the basement. Yep. Okay, that's good. If you have a meeting, it could be a synod or something like that. I'm going to have to remember the PRCA. I can tell you Robert's rules, okay? So the question is this. After you've had a meeting, you've adopted some type of a motion, several years later or several meetings later, can you go back and just kill that thing? The answer is yes. It's called rescinding. You can rescind a motion already passed, and that has to happen in which one of the members that had voted on the winning side changes their mind. Because otherwise, the losing side can just keep bringing that back up year after year after year and try to kill it. So the winning side, one of the members that voted on the winning side has to make that motion, which means in our situation, he'd have to be a delegate again. So I cannot tell you if you can rescind a motion. I just simply forget. Eric. Oh, okay. Okay. So that would be instructive for us. Okay. All right, so the comment is that in some classes there was an appeal to a motion that had previously been taken at a previous meeting. And then that was denied for various reasons. Okay. It was a failed motion. All right. So maybe the president asked, were you for it or against it or something like that? And I don't know what we say about that. Okay. If there's no further questions, I'll go ahead and pray. And there's refreshments downstairs. Let's pray. Our God and Father in heaven, we come before thy holy throne of grace. Thou art the God of order. Thou art the God that has given us all things that pertain to this life and to our heavenly life, to our faith. We thank thee for that. We even see the providential gift that thou hast given us by way of the parliamentary procedure that we follow in our churches, but also in our broader society by way of Robert's rules. We pray that we might use this cultural development for good so that we operate our meetings effectively, correctly, and are not intimidated to participate or to join in various meetings. We pray above all that thou would continue to work thy Holy Spirit within us so that each of us looks at our own sins and we see the magnitude of them, and we hate them and we flee from them. Pray that thou would now be with our broader assemblies as they use many of these rules. Give the members, the delegates of those broader assemblies, a understanding of the rules that we have so that they attend these meetings with confidence and are not bashful, but instead speak and are able to speak what is on their minds. We pray that thou would continue to bless our denomination and all of the denominations that exist across this world that are true to thy word. Continue to bless thy church. Thank thee for this opportunity for a meeting. We thank thee for young Calvinists, what an opportunity it is to meet together as young people that have a concern for many different matters. We pray that thou would continue to bless our endeavors and our efforts as we interact with one another. Pray now that thou would keep us from sin and be with us on our homeward way. For Jesus' sake, amen. All right, I'll join you till 8:30 or so, and then I should get home for family visitation. Thank you for coming.